Yo, what's up guys, hope you guys are doing good. So today we are going to see what if Naruto was an incarnation of Asura, part 2. Hope you will enjoy this video, so before we start please like the video and subscribe to our channel and hit bell notification, it motivates me to upload more fanfics for my lovely audience. So let's get started. He first threw a punch towards his face, but Itachi suddenly disappeared. Naruto immediately turned around, ready to kick him. The Uchiha grabbed his foot and threw him in the opposite direction. Itachi was caught off guard by Naruto, knowing he was behind him. Naruto stood up immediately and grabbed a kunai from his pouch, rolling it in his direction finger. He rushed again, running towards him, but threw the kunai halfway through. Itachi saw the kunai heading towards his chest and moved away, but then Naruto grabbed another kunai and threw at the kunai in midair, causing it to change direction. Itachi was surprised, but the kunai didn't fly anywhere close to him despite changing the direction. Seeing that, Itachi suddenly moved much faster, showing up behind Naruto and softly kicking his foot, making him fall to the ground. Naruto kept the cool head and wanted to try and stand up again when he saw Itachi aiming his kunai at his face. The young blonde stopped dead on his track. For a moment, he feared that Itachi might try to harm him. Still, he smiled and pulled the kunai away before walking up to him and stretching out his hand. Naruto accepted the hand and stood up, waiting for Itachi to say that he was disappointed by him. Very well done, Naruto-kun. The idea to use the kunai like that was a good one, Itachi said, smiling at him and rubbing his hair, much to the blonde's annoyance. Naruto beamed at the words, his face lightened up like a candle. You mean it? Naruto asked with a sense of insecurity in his voice. Itachi smiled again and nodded his head. He kneeled on his level, pecked his forehead with his fingers, and smiled. Now then, let's begin a real training. Do what I say, Itachi said with a stern tone, and Naruto nodded his head in agreement. After 1 month, the following month Itachi taught Naruto whenever he could. Usually, he was in missions but sometimes had time to teach Naruto about chakra control and other various essential things. From sticking a leaf on his forehead to reading books about chakra, clans and other important things. Naruto had taken a liking to seals. After understanding that a seal could hold someone like Kurama on his stomach, the young blonde understood that there was a lot of potential hidden behind fuinjutsu. Right now, Naruto was sticking leaves on his forehead and balancing kunai on his fingertips. Itachi told him that was an important lesson for chakra control. Kurama had taught him a few things as well, but mostly helped him whenever he was tired, like giving him his chakra so he could train longer. Naruto spends at least 9 hours every day training kenjutsu, fuinjutsu, and taijutsu. Kurama and Itachi told him that he could start learning ninjutsu once he had reasonable chakra control, and according to Kurama, it wouldn't take long. Naruto had asked Furball if he should tell Itachi anything about what he learned from Hagoromo, but Kurama was against it. He said that despite everything, Itachi was loyal to the village. And Naruto didn't say anything to the old Hokage about Hagoromo or him being a reincarnation of Indra and Ashura Otsutsuki because he still felt bitter that he had declined any clan the request to raise him. Why? Naruto didn't know why a family like everyone else couldn't raise him. Am I really a monster? Naruto quickly shook his head in denial. The leaves on his forehead and the kunai fell to the grass. The young blonde kept a stoic face, but inside, he felt like someone had stabbed his heart. Standing up, he looked at the palms of his hands. The moon and sun symbol still made him confused. Walking through the training field, his hands behind his head, he thought of his parents. Before he could think of anything, he suddenly felt 2 chakras rushing towards him. Jumping up, a sword cut through the air. Naruto's eyes widened, seeing the masked shinobi with a katana in his hand. Who are you? Naruto exclaimed, jumping away. Jumping up to a tree, he turned his head just in time to see another Anbu ready to slice him. Naruto saw the sword moving slower and slower towards his face. Naruto didn't have time to think about what was happening to him before he jumped away from the Chunin level speed attack. Usually, anyone else would be surprised by the kid, but they felt and looked as emotionless as a stone. Landing on his feet, Naruto grabbed a kunai from his pouch and was ready to defend himself. These were Anbu and much stronger than him, and not to mention there were two of them. The blonde knew he couldn't outrun them. He was a kid, and being able to outrun an Anbu would be impossible. Naruto, you need my help, Kurama said in anger. Suddenly Naruto was engulfed in red chakra, and his eyes changed. Now he had a fully matured Sharingan in each eye and red slit. His nails grew on his hands, 2 times longer, his whiskers looking more and darker, his hair grew spiky, a red cloak of chakra surrounded him, it almost looked like made of bubbles, a tail slowly grew behind his back. He was standing on his 4, glaring at the Anbu in front of him. Before the Anbu could do anything, Naruto roared at the closest Anbu sending a shock wave, throwing him against a tree. Naruto immediately rushed at the second one. He moved his right hand forward, and the chakra cloak surrounding his hand expanded and moved towards the Anbu. The hand made of chakra looked 5 times larger than expected. The Anbu avoided the attack, but Naruto was already behind him and sliced his back open. His blood flew like a waterfall around Naruto as well, but he didn't have time to think as the second Anbu was behind him ready to stab him. Then suddenly, a third hand made of chakra came out from his back and grabbed the sword before it could penetrate his back. Naruto moved his right hand immediately and cut open his stomach. His guts fell in the ground, the blood turned the grass red, the Anbu fell on his knees, but he didn't make a sound, not even moving his hands on his wound to try and hold his guts inside. Naruto's eyes widened when he saw what he had just done. The body started burning, and soon there was nothing left but ash. The chakra cloak around Naruto disappeared, and the blonde fell on his knees, tears running down his cheek, his eyes widened like a plate, his heart beating on his throat like a hammer. I'm a monst. No, Kurama interjected before he could finish what he wanted to say. Don't even think for a minute that you're a monster. You're not a monster, and the monster is whoever sent these people to kill you. A monster is people who threaten to kill a baby in front of their parents. A monster is when someone kills a little boy for no reason other than for the rush of blood. Not you. A monster is when someone forces you to kill the only people that you could call friends. A monster is when forces you to kill numberless people for no reason, Kurama said with honesty in his voice. Just mentioning it, Kurama remembered when he attacked the village when Kushina left the world. Naruto stood silent and thought about what he said. The blonde wasn't stupid, and he knew what Itachi and every shinobi mostly did in their missions. After an hour of nothing but silence, his cheeks dry, he stood up. Thank you, Kurama, Naruto spoke in a tone of relief and happiness, happy that he had someone like Kurama with him all the time. Let's go back to your apartment, Kurama said. Kurama had made sure that his chakra wouldn't expand and be detected by everyone during the fight, but still, someone could have felt Naruto. Tomorrow, Yugao Azuki was Konohagakure no Sato's premier swordsman. Her skill with the sword far exceeded the basic instruction that constituted the minimal training that was bestowed upon the Anbu within whose ranks she was assimilated into. As a member of the Black Ops division of her ninja village, Yugao had been exposed to missions most ninja within the ranks of the village couldn't even fathom. Considering this facet of her life, Yugao was understandably upset when the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, assigned her to watch over Konoha's resident troublemaker and pariah. At the same time, squad rotation policies were being implemented. The vast majority of Konoha's adult population was well aware of the fact that Naruto Uzumaki played host and jailer to the most powerful entity known to civilization as a result of some clever handiwork by the late fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze. In a desperate attempt to save the village he was sworn to protect, Minato sacrificed his life to contain the Kyuubi no Yoko within Naruto. Regrettably, Naruto was seen as a physical representation of the suffering and carnage caused by Kyuubi attacking Konoha. As such, many of the villagers indulged in the therapeutic act of destroying the 9-year-old body and spirit to derive some sort of compensation for their losses. During one of these therapeutic sessions, Yugao was able to track Naruto being chased by a rotund and inebriated member of Konoha's civilian population. A few short moments earlier, the aforementioned civilian had spotted a Naruto walking by. Naruto turned around at the sound of a wooden crate being kicked aside. The man drunk had a large piece of metal in his hand, ready to harm Naruto, but much to the ANBU's surprise. Naruto dodged the attack and just walked away, not wanting to deal with drunken idiots. Yugao reported the night's events to the Hokage as soon as she was able to verify that Naruto had reached his apartment. A small smile graced her features as she watched the boy crash into his couch, falling asleep with a smile of his own plastered firmly onto his face. Upon reaching her commander's office, she relayed the events of the night with unerring detail. It was clear to the aged Hokage that the Anbu agent was particularly proud of how the young boy had stood up for himself. The unmistakable hint of pride is what led to the current topic of conversation between the pair. Hokage-sama, Yugao spoke reverently, if you allowed it, I would like to teach Naruto the basics of Kenjutsu so that he may be prepared for such situations, if and when the need arises. He was up against a drunken man who had no formal training in any form of combat. The Hokage turned around to face the massive window in his office as he pondered his charge's request. Hiruzen loved the boy dearly and was painfully aware of the mistreatment he was subject to daily. The idea proposed by Yugao greatly appealed to him until he realized that members of his council, both ninja and civilian, would be in an uproar if they learned that the village pariah was being tutored by one of their elite ninjas. The following actions would only cause Naruto more harm than good, as more populous members might be tempted to cause bodily harm to the child. As the Hokage turned back around to face Yugao, she identified the defeated slump of her commander's shoulder and correctly guessed that she would not be given the affirmative. Yugao-chan, the Hokage began looking into her eyes, conveying his thoughts on the matter with the mere address. I understand Hokage-sama. Yugao picked up the signals quickly. She chose to continue, however. I just wish there was some way to pass on instruction to the boy. The pain was clear in his eyes if only masked behind his determination. That statement sparked an idea in the Hokage's mind. The problem arose from private tutoring and the reallocation of a competent ninja's abilities towards a lost cause in the eyes of both councils, but not the passing on of instruction. Yugao-chan, I want a critical assessment of Naruto's physical abilities and mental capacity to the best of your ability submitted within a week from today. Along with a recommended training program for the boy to compensate for any lacking in either criterion. I cannot have you spend time tutoring the boy as this would be seen in a bad light by the wretched council, but maybe you can pass on your knowledge in written form. Yugao snapped her eyes to meet those of the Hokage. The idea was sound since instilling the fundamentals of combat need not require an active tutor. Naruto could learn from scrolls about adequate exercises, basic kenjutsu. If he took the matter seriously, he would instill discipline into his life, a value most important for a disciple of kenjutsu. Giving a sharp nod to her commander and a quick salute, Yugao snapped back her mask on and disappeared in a flurry of leaves. The Hokage sighed once again. Sure, a significant problem was on the verge of being solved. But why did his ninja insist on leaving his office using a leaf shunshin? They always left leaves behind in his office. He sighed, a headache ready to split open his head. Itachi had informed him that Naruto was perfectly healthy. While that brought happiness to his old heart, he couldn't help but remember the voice and face Naruto had the last time he saw him. He wondered when Jiraiya would return. Naruto desperately needed someone in his life, but the old Sannin mentioned in his last letter that he had decided to meet Naruto once he became a genin. At the same time, that sounded good on paper. Sarutobi knew that it was a long 7 years for the poor boy. Citing on sadness, he returned to his paperwork. Naruto. Again on his mindscape, Naruto was in front of Kurama's cage, and his mindscape had changed slightly. Now instead of just a boring hall with water on the floor, now they were trees around. Kurama had said that he liked the new mindscape more. Why do you call me Kurama? Naruto asked, knowing there must be a reason that Furball called him. The giant fox, instead of answering, just turned his head to his right. Turning, Naruto saw Hagoromo standing there, but one thing Naruto noticed straight away, as he looked more transparent, almost like he was slowly disappearing. Hagoromo-sama, why are you here? Naruto asked respectfully, looking at the older man, giving the young blonde a small smile. I need to tell you something before I disappear. It has something to do with your father, he stated, and Naruto had his full attention on him. Long ago, in a time forgotten by the people of the world, was an era of enduring rage and unending wars. Humankind had been cursed to fight each other in an eternal war. They fought over petty reasons, for performing horrific crimes against one another or for no reason at all other than violence and death. Different factions often tried to better themselves by weakening their enemies so their own military strength could be more significant, only for a greater force to overwhelm them later. Humanity had a curse, a distasteful and infectious curse that all beings were infected with. 1. More powerful than any war. The curse of hatred, a potent force that can drive an innocent person to become a beast fueled by rage to hunt down those who wrong them. All the while inflicting more pain, brutality, and spreading further hatred among people. Hatred was like a tree, and it only continued to grow as more and more people were festered by it. Those who were directly affected by it and those who bared witness to those horrific outbursts of fury, no one was ever safe from it. One may even say it was genetic and could be passed down the generations. But what came after hatred? Most would say healing. They were healing from the pain of their lives and the pain they brought on others. Only an imbecile would believe that it would bring about a stop to hatred. What comes after hatred would be either of the following things: emptiness, where a person would lose everything that was ever close to them, their own self. The emptiness it brought forth was like an ever-spreading fire with nothing to quench it with, or even more hatred, where the anger would blind people to the truth and make them accept that the world itself was responsible for what happened to them. Among the humans and their inherited hatred was a tree. A tree of massive height and equally enormous power. A tree that was worshipped as a god. This tree had a consciousness of its own, but very few knew the full extent of its intellect. This tree watched as the humans around it fought and murdered each other and cheated on one another for their own gain while turning a blind eye to others. The tree knew that while humanity had the capacity for good and evil, they overwhelmingly chose the latter option. The tree would often look down upon the humans and be disgusted by what it would see. At times it took pity upon them for their short lives and weakness. The colossal tree didn't know whether it liked being praised as a god or feared like the Shinigami. But it did tolerate the level of respect the humans showed it. Even the tree, with all its foresight, knew that one day wisdom would be lost, hope would diminish, fate would be turned in different directions, and justice would fall. It was merely waiting for that to happen and for humanity to be entirely consumed by hatred. Every 1,000 years, the God tree bore the fruit of immeasurable power and destruction, a fruit that held its power within. The reasons why one could not lay their hands upon this fruit had been lost to ages. Thousands of years ago, a man named Tenji was the leader of the land of ancestors. He desired for peace and tried to avoid direct confrontation with his opponents to avoid wars being waged. He wished for a peaceful alliance and negotiations with them. One day he came across a lady who could be considered a goddess at first glance in terms of her beauty. She wore a white robe with 6 tomos in the front and purple lining near her arms. She had beautiful silky and straight hair, the same color as that of snow. But what mesmerized him were her eyes. They were pupil-less, giving off a silvery glow. He saw her gazing at the night sky with such patience. He had not seen this person before in his land, so he spoke to her. "May I know who you are?" asked Tenji curiously, looking at her. The lady, for her part, didn't reply for a while. A few seconds later, she turned to look at him. "I'm Kagaya Otsutsuki." He found her voice to be very melodic. "Where do you come from? What do you desire here?" And again, Kagaya didn't reply for a few seconds. She didn't know if she could confide to him what she wanted or where she came from. From what she felt of these vile creatures called humans, they were filled with anger and darkness. Yet from him, she couldn't feel much of it. "I desire peace. Peace among everyone. A place devoid of wars and hatred." She looked at him and saw the man nod his head. "I come not from another land in this world, but from the stars." Tenji, for his part, was surprised to hear this. Wanting to know more about her, he began to make small talks with her. After that fateful day, Tenji allowed Kagaya to stay within his palace. He was glad there was another who shared the same ideals as him. They began to meet each other more often and spend more time together each passing day. Soon enough, the two became lovers. His devotion to Kagaya's cause for peace made him threaten his own followers with death if they dared threaten peace with the land of that. After Sukazu, the minister of land of that tried to kidnap Kagaya, Tenji was horrified of Kagaya's godlike powers when he witnessed her kill many of his soldiers in self-defense. Eventually, Tenji decided to betray his love to prevent a war from breaking out. However, as the two sides attempted to capture Kagaya, she ate the God Tree fruit and gained unimaginable powers. With her new abilities, she cast the infinite Tsukuyomi. As Tenji fell victim to the genjutsu, he asked her what she was, unaware that she was carrying his children. Kagaya Otsutsuki, for her benevolence for ending the wars and stopping the spread of hatred, was named Rabbit Goddess because of her two horn-like protrusions, which resembled rabbit ears. Like the Shinju, Kagaya was also worshipped as a living god on earth. People bowed before her in respect and reverence for her power and divine will that many considered had no equal. However, Kagaya had not broken the chain of hatred, instead, it merely fractured it. She forced more people to submit to her iron will to stop the hate from spreading. Her power, which was once praised, soon came to be feared, and instead of being called the Usagi no Megami, she came to be known as the Oni demon. At some point, Kagaya gave birth to two sons Hagoromo and Hamura. Both children were born with the same power as their mother. The ability to use chakra. These two boys gained legendary prowess of their own using their own innate ability. When Hagoromo and Hamura found out about their mother's inhuman act of putting people under her control and using them as puppets, they wanted to confront her. But Hagoromo knew that he didn't have enough power to go against his mother yet. He soon came across a toad by the name of Gamamaru who could utilize natural energy. Intrigued by the power in Senjutsu chakra, both Hagoromo and Hamura went to Mount Myoboku and Gamamaru. There Hagoromo learned to utilize natural energy, Senjutsu chakras. When he returned to confront his mother, he was further shocked. Hagoromo was horrified that his mother, who had given birth to him, could become one with the vile creature in front of him. During the confrontation, Hagoromo awakened the Rinnegan, God's eyes, due to the pain of harming his brother, Hamura, who his mother was controlling. Hagoromo was fortunate that Gamamaru had given him a tag with the kanji for heal, filled with sage chakra, which he used to heal his brother from the mortal wound Hamura received. "Why, mother? Why would you commit such atrocious acts? Don't you care about the people of this land?" asked an enraged Hagoromo. "Chakra is everything. It's life, and it is soul. It needs to be whole again, you insolent child. You dare betray me," spoke Kagaya with an emotionless face. The two brothers fought in a cataclysmic battle that scarred the very earth. With all their power, the two sons had fought to the near end of their will to defeat the beast, which was their mother. However, the Jubi was connected to the world, just as the world was connected to the Jubi. It was immortal. So, if they couldn't kill the beast, the creature had to be sealed inside a person's body not to bring about even more catastrophe. Thus, Hagoromo sealed the chakra and soul of the beast within himself, and the body of his mother sealed off inside the moon, which he created with one of his decisive moves, Six Paths Chibaku Tensai. The husk of the 10 tails was sealed inside the moon as well. So, Hagoromo became the world's first Jinchuriki. And like his mother before him, his own power soared to new heights. He, like his mother, became a god. One even more revered than his mother, wielding the greatest weapon in the world, chakra. Hagoromo, who later became a monk, came to be regarded as the Raikudo Sennin, sage of 6 paths, while his brother Hamura went to live off his life on the moon where he could be close to their mother. Hagoromo created a religion, one which people would aspire to and believe in and give them hope. This religion was named Ninshu, later known as Ninjutsu. He aspired to bring peace across the lands by teaching people about chakra and its uses in a peaceful manner. So, Hagoromo shared his chakra with different people who were willing to follow him in his quest to bring about a change in this world. He hoped people would connect the chakra with their spiritual energy, yin chakra, allowing others to understand each other. Hagoromo later in his life had two sons. The elder one was named Indra Otsutsuki, and the younger one was called Asura Otsutsuki. Hagoromo knew that he could not live very long, even with his physical solid chakra, yang chakra. The reason is the extremely potent and vile chakra flowing through his chakra coils. Thus, he intended to teach his sons and his current followers, who he viewed as companions, to teach all he knew about chakra and ninshu before he could pass on the mantle to one of his sons. Indra and Asura had a relatively peaceful childhood growing up. Asura was extremely close to his big brother Indra, whom he idealized and hoped to become like him someday. Indra, well, you could say he was more secluded from the two young children, but he still cared for Asura a lot. When the time came, both Indra and Asura began to learn ninshu. It was pretty clear that Indra was more intellectual and more into his studies and practicing the practical aspects of ninshu compared to Asura, who would mostly say, "It's boring. Why must I study this?" One could say Indra was a prodigy in the field of ninshu, while Asura was the complete opposite. One day, Indra created more practical uses of ninshu by stating that one can use various elements of the nature by changing the flow of chakra in their body and molding it differently by going through hand seals. Saru, monkey, tatsu, dragon, nay, rat, tori, bird, mi, snake, ushi, ox, inu, dog, uma, horse, tora, tiger, I, boar, hitsuji, ram, yu, hare. People were highly impressed by this discovery, and some even started whispering about Indra being the one who would carry on the way of ninshu. Although Hagoromo was pleased that his son was progressing in ninshu and extending its uses, somewhere, he had a nagging feeling that Indra would seclude himself more as his prowess increased. At the same time, Asura would remain in his shadow. Still, he had high hopes from both his sons that they would do what he wouldn't be able to in his life, that is, bring about a revolutionary change in this world that will make people understand each other even better and create a world filled with love and harmony. It later became clear that Indra acquired his father's yin chakra and visual prowess, spiritual energy, while Asura acquired his father's yang chakra and strong body and longevity, physical energy. As in the following years, Indra awakened his Sharingan copy Wheel Eye, while saving his brother from a rampaging bear. Ever since Indra awakened the Sharingan, he seemed to have become colder towards people. He started visualizing that one can conquer anything through the power and always stuck to what is correct and incorrect and abode by his rules. Compared to his brother, Asura was not too advanced in the usage of ninshu, and he could never keep up with his brother during training sessions. Although, People liked Asura's more cheerful and easygoing attitude, which made him easier to talk to than Indra. One day a friend of Asura came to him asking for his help. Asura, my mother seems to be very ill, and the cure which I'm looking for is across the forests, and getting there through the woods will take time. You practice ninju, yes. Could you help me out? The man said pleadingly. Asura was considered a friendly and helpful person. Thus, people mostly came to him or Hagormo when needed. Yeah, I suppose I could do that. Just wait here and watch me. Asura said with a smirk. He did specific hand seals, and a strong gust of wind was blowing from the palm of his hands, which tore down a pathway to the end of the forest, making a quick way to the end. Later that day, Asura was reprimanded by Indra for blindly helping someone without considering the matter, because of the man who Asura helped just wanted the forests cut down for his own selfish gains. Indra later locked the man in a dungeon and warned Asura not to go near him. Asura, being a forgiving person, went to get him out. However, when Asura got the man out of the cave, the dungeon was inside the cave. They came across Indra waiting there. What are you doing, Asura? Did I not tell you not to go near the imbecile? Indra asked in a monotone voice. His face showed no emotion whatsoever. Ni-san, we should give him another chance. Punishing someone for such futile acts is not the way. And he hasn't harmed anyone, said Asura. It doesn't matter. What he did was against the rules, and he must pay the price for it. It was said in such an uncaring manner that it made Asura flinch. Asura jumped in front of the man to protect him. Indra jumped towards Asura and pushed him towards the tree. Asura hit the tree before falling to the ground. He wouldn't admit it, but his Ni-san hits hard. Indra, quicker than a flash, had his hand inside the man's chest, sparkling with Ration chakra, lightning chakra. Ni-san, why did you do that? Asura was astonished that his Ni-san could kill someone just like that. When Indra turned to glare at his brother, Asura saw the three tomos in his eyes spinning in a threatening way. That moment he saw the hatred in his brother's eyes. This world needs order. It needs change. And it is only through power, and one can hope to bring about such a revolution. That's all, Indra said darkly before vanishing from the spot. Asura, for his part, could not comprehend why his brother started acting maliciously ever since he awakened the Sharingan. He often felt intimidated by those eyes but shrugged it off, thinking it was nothing. After a while, he made a grave for the man and just stood in front of it in the stillness of the night. When he turned to his right, he saw his two-san father standing beside him. Indra has changed Asura. His eyes are like my mother's. Those eyes give him unimaginable power. He desires order in this world and wants to do it in his way. The way he goes about ninju is not how I intended it to be spread. Hagoromo said with a tired sigh. After a few seconds of silence, Asura walked away from the spot. As years passed by, it became more noticeable why Indra was hailed as a genius. He could accomplish anything with little to no effort and started living a solitary life. He primarily believed other people would merely inhibit his growth and potential. Asura, on the other hand, could do nothing on his own. But through his determination and will, along with the ideals of relying on others, his friends, did Asura's talents bloom like a flower in spring. While, unlike Indra, who led a solitary life believing that others would only hinder him, Asura became a capable leader, amassing many loyal followers, most of whom were his childhood friends. He, like his father, wished to begin to spread ninju to the world through the help of his friends. In the end, Hagoromo, seeing both Indra's and Asura's accomplishments, did the sage choose between the two of them, the heir of ninju, the prodigious son Indra, or the no-good, untalented Asura. Knowing of his younger son's exploits and the quality of never giving up on the good inside people gave Hagoromo hope that cooperation and love would bring about true peace. At the same time, lust for power and dominance would only bring about temporary peace. Thus, Asura was chosen as the heir to ninju. Hearing this, Indra walked out of the room angered at his father's choice while Asura was shocked. Father, why me? Ni-san would do a better job compared to me, said Asura. While I do believe Indra is ahead of you in certain aspects, but ninshu should be spread to teach love, compassion and be used to bring peace. One must be kind and filled with love and have great patience for that. Those are the qualities I see in you, my son. Later that night, when everyone was celebrating, Asura went to meet his father again. A doubt somewhere in his mind that his father made a wrong choice still lingering in his mind. He came upon the door which led to the hall where his father sat and made a slow walk. He soon reached the place and saw his father sitting there with his eyes closed. Was it the right choice to san? Asura asked in a low whisper. Hagoromo opened his eyes which seemed to give an eerie purplish glow and had several concentric circles and a small black dot as a pupil. He stared at his younger son for a while and answered, Asura, the world has always been in constant fighting and wars and has started on some of the most unthinkable things. Human life is a precious thing that should not be wasted in fighting wars. I believe that one day, the world shall know true peace. Love and compassion are an essential part of that. Indra is turning more and more like my mother each passing day. Bringing peace to the world via power and dominance is only temporary, and with time people come to fear the power dominating them as they cannot comprehend it. Come here, my son, I shall now pass on to you what is now yours. Asura approached his father, whereupon, Hagoromo touched Asura's forehead with his 2 fingers and passed on his yang chakra, also included 6 paths senjutsu powers. In another part of the village, Indra had just killed his 2 most loyal followers with a tear-stained face have a single thought in his mind, whenever someone close to me dies, my Sharingan evolves. Soon, his Sharingan evolved to the Mangekyo Sharingan, 3 tomos converging in together to take the shape of a whirlpool. Furious over his father's choice and being denied what he felt was his, Indra challenged his father's decision. Overcome with anger, jealousy, and hate, Indra attacked Asura, claiming what he felt was his birthright. However, with the help of others chakra converging with his and his Raikudo, 6 paths powers, Asura awakened the ability to use Muton and defeat his older brother. Indra, not taking his loss lightly, left the area before stating he would never follow his way of ninshu and spend his life trying to destroy him. A few weeks after Indra had left, Hagoromo was counting his final few months on his bed. He knew he didn't have very long to live. He also knew once he died, the Jubi would be free again. To prevent that, he separated the chakra of the 10 tails into 9 separate parts and, using Omnyoten, Vanbutsu Sozo creation of all things, made bodies for the 9 chakras ranging from Ikibi, 1 tail, to Kyubi, 9 tails. He later breathed life into his 9 children, Hagoromo called the bijus his children, and put the chakra in the respective bodies, each biju having a different ability. A few months later, Hagoromo went to his mindscape to have a few last words with his 9 children. He looked at Kurama Kyubi, with a somber look on his face. Kurama had a few tears rolling down his face, although he was trying hard to keep up the tough act. He was his eldest child and knew how much it would hurt him. A few seconds later, he looked at all of them with a serene smile on his face and said, I will not live much longer. Shukaku, 1 tail, Matabi, 2 tails, Isobu, 3 tails, Son Goku, 4 tails, Kokuo, 5 tails, Seiken, 6 tails, Chome, 7 tails, Yuki, 8 tails, and Kurama, 9 tails. Even if you are far apart, you will always be together. You will be in different sizes from how you are now and have different names. But there will come a time when you will be led down the right path. I hope you learn what true strength is. Hagoromo looks at Kurama and smiles slightly, and says, before that time. That day Hagoromo knew there would come a time when someone would be born to bring peace or destruction. Soon after his death, Asura had 3 children. Roku Otsutsuki, that was later known as Roku Uzumaki, was the founder of the Uzumaki clan. Asura entrusted him with the sword, Dark Blood, before he left the world. He lived longer than all his siblings, dying in his sleep at the age of 249. Ajana Otsutsuki was the one who created the most powerful kenjutsu moves. She was known around the world as the Red Silence. She later married Roku and gave birth to 7 kids, 4 boys and 3 girls. Ashura gave her the most powerful scroll, the Silent Secret, but Ajana could never understand what the scroll could do. The scroll was blank, and no one could write anything on it, and could not even be destroyed by fire or any kind of ninshu, therefore was soon forgotten after a few centuries. Seiketsu Otsutsuki was given the staff of elements by Ashura and was passed down to children and grandchildren. He later was known as Seiketsu Senju, the founder of the Senju clan, which would start a long rivalry with the Uchiha clan. Indra Otsutsuki had taken the war fan of his father before he left, passing it down to his future generations. Indra soon founded the Uchiha clan and had 5 kids, 2 boys and 3 girls. Itzo Uchiha, Daimonic Uchiha, Atara Uchiha, Tsunade Uchiha and Ilka Uchiha. Each one was born with the ability to use Sharingan, later Mangekyo Sharingan. Naruto listened to Hagoromo throughout the whole story, and he knew that wars had been going on for a long time, but to see that it has been almost 2 millennia since Hagoromo left this world and the humans were still on the cycle of hatred. Would it ever end? Naruto asked himself, not knowing the answer yet. You said you wanted to tell me about my father, Naruto stated. Hagoromo nodded his head. He didn't have that much longer in this world but wanted to know what Naruto wanted to do with his life. He believed Naruto to be the one to either bring peace or destruction, but with how Naruto was being raised, and he was worried about what he could do. Usually, he would want to wait until Naruto reached at least 10 years old to approach him, but he had no time left. I will, but before I talk about that, he suddenly clapped his hands, and 2 figures came out behind Hagoromo. Naruto eyed both of them. He couldn't help but have a feeling that he had met them before. The first had a weird friendly face and was smiling, but the second one was eyeing Naruto almost like he expected to fight the kid. The second one had long dark hair that reached his middle back, a strange war fan tied behind his back and wearing red armor. Naruto looked at the 2 men who walked closer. They stood just behind Hagoromo. Naruto recognized the first one as Hashirama Senju, the first Hokage, and the god of shinobi. But he couldn't recognize the second one despite feeling that he had seen him before, but his power was enormous. While Hashirama wasn't trying to scare little Naruto, the second one was purposely releasing his killer intent at the young boy. Naruto suddenly felt pressure all over his body, and everything felt cold. His knees suddenly felt weak, and he almost collapsed to the ground, his skin feeling like little blades stabbing him and piercing his flesh and bones. His nails felt like they would fall off from his fingers, his nose started burning along with his ears, but despite all that, he refused to fall unconscious or collapse. Seeing Naruto losing all color and his breath quickening, Hashirama immediately understood what was happening, turning to his friend. Stop it now, Madara, he yelled at him, and Kurama had started countering his ki with his own, but it wasn't enough against the mighty Uchiha Madara. During all this, Hagoromo stood silent and analyzed the blonde. To say he was surprised that Naruto hadn't lost his consciousness would be the understatement of a century. Instead, Naruto was still standing on his feet firmly, refusing to even fall on his knees, let alone lose consciousness. Madara kept quiet and narrowed his eyes at the little brat. While he wasn't exactly using his full ki but instead only 10% of it, he was still surprised by the kid's stubbornness. After a few seconds, Madara stopped his ki, and the brat was still standing on his foot, breathing heavily, his head down, looking at the floor. Hashirama sighed in relief that his friend had stopped his attack on the kid but couldn't help but be impressed by the kid. He was sure anyone else would lose their consciousness by now, and Naruto was still standing. Slowly raising his head, Naruto looked at them with Rinnegan in both of his eyes. Hashirama gasped, but Madara, for the first time, had a slight smile on the edge of his lips. Seeing the brat, Madara was reminded of his little brother. The evening was late when the almighty leader of the Uchiha clan, Madara, was called away urgently from a meeting to come to his brother's side. 3 days went by since the younger man was injured gravely in battle with Senju Tobirama, his condition on arriving back at the compound critical. Much hadn't changed over the days, his condition fluctuating from steady to life and death in a matter of hours. For the last day, though, he was getting weaker and weaker, having internal bleeding that even the best healers couldn't stop. Madara was not yet informed of this. Now, being rushed in, he prayed it was good news of his brother's condition, that Izuna had made some miraculous feat of recovery. Alas, it was far from that. Madara entered the hallway leading down to his younger brother's room, which was at the very end of the long stretch of space. A mask of indifference held its ground on the outside, though on the inside, anxieties were riding high. His only footsteps echoed on the hardwood floor, slowly creeping closer into earshot of the man who stood in the doorway of the room. As he finally entered, walking past the clan's best medic, a solemn glance was spared alongside a single pat on the shoulder. The elder stared down at his brother lying motionlessly on the futon bed. It was lucky the doctor had decency enough to slide shut the bamboo-framed door behind himself. Madara traipsed gingerly forward, kneeling at his sibling's bedside. Izuna stirred in his sleep, blinking his naturally dark eyes open to meet the gaze of his beloved older brother. He gave a soft, weak smile. The clan leader's brother knew he wasn't going to make it, not this time. He informed the doctor to get Madara so that he could relay his final thoughts and wishes. There was something he needed to give him. Big brother, he croaked, voice quiet from barely having the strength to speak anymore. Do not speak, little brother, you need your rest. Madara interrupted, concerned for the younger's well-being. Izuna just shook his head softly. I'm dying, Madara, there is nothing the doctors can do for me at this point. He replied bluntly, needing only to get the facts into his older brother's head. Said brother had a look of shock, of pain, on his face. It couldn't be. He'd known the injuries inflicted upon him were grave, but not that they would prove to be fatal in the end. Izuna sighed gently, seeing from the expression given that this came as pain and a shock. Did he want to leave his only brother? Of course not. Izuna's wish had only been to make him happy and proud. But most importantly, he didn't want to leave Ari alone. She needed him, he needed her. There is no escaping it, and it's my time. I'm sorry to be leaving you, big brother, but there is one thing I want you to do for me and one thing I wish to bestow upon you to aid in this final request. The younger held authority in his tone, seeming wisdom beyond his years. The elder masked his sorrows, for now, listening intently to the younger's request. I want you to protect our clan, do it no injustices. Do not trust any who spill the blood of our clansmen. The life in the onyx eyes of the speaker was slowly fading. To help you, take my eyes. I know your light has slowly been fading. You need to remain strong as a leader. Izuna, I will protect the Uchiha with all my might, but I cannot take your eyes. Madara was shocked at what his brother told him to do as aid. Take his eyes. He couldn't possibly do that. As for protecting the clan, that was a given. The younger stretched over, grabbing one of his brother's gloved hands in both of his own. Their gazes met, the dimming onyx of the dying sibling almost pleading. Please, big brother. Though his voice was soft, the wanting for this to be done was ever so clear. Being unable to refuse this request, Madara slowly reached over and completed the task once his hand was released. Blood ran down Izuna's cheeks, seeming to take the form of red tears from closed eyelids. However, there was a faint smile on his lips. I love you, big brother. He relayed his last words, last breath lost, last sign of life gone. Uchiha Izuna was dead. Madara's face distorted with pain, sadness, and grief, bloodied hands shakily grabbing his brother's cooling body, drawing him into his arms, the gifted eyes set aside safely for the time being. He cradled the body so closely, so protectively, placing his forehead against Izuna's. His eyes were squeezed shut, teeth gritted together as he tried to stop the tears pricking at his eyes. I'm sorry, Izuna, I couldn't protect you, I couldn't keep the promise I made to myself in boyhood. I have failed you. He clenched the fabric of the younger's clothing, silent tears escaping and hitting the pale, cold cheek of the recently deceased man. He continues, this time I will fulfill wishes. This time, I will not fail you. The Uchiha's head rose slowly, eyes opening to reveal the Mangekyo Sharingan, casting its scarlet glow as the last light of the day faded into the blackness of the night. Izuna's body was placed back on the futon, a small piece of cloth covering his face. Madara remained there for hours, allowed no one to enter the room, death threats quickly spilt. There was one thing physically different of his appearance now, the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, blazing from eyes underlaid by fresh tear stains, the glowing windows burning with the flames of pure hatred. On this day, Madara lost all hope. Though he had been blessed with a newfound light, never before was he surrounded by such overpowering darkness. This one is a brave one, Madara whispered to himself. He then focused on Kyuubi behind bars. This is how I always wanted to see you, behind bars, Madara taunted Kyuubi, who smirked. At least I'm not dead, Kurama replied, earning a laugh from Hashirama. They all focused back on Naruto. Naruto, still breathing heavily, felt the pressure all around him suddenly disappear, his hands on his knees but still standing. He refused to give up, and he couldn't, he never will. Slowly raising his head, his eyes focused on the man with red armor. He saw a glimpse of surprise on his face for a second but disappeared as soon as it appeared. Meanwhile, the first Hokage wasn't trying to hide that he was surprised to see the kid still standing and not mentioning the Rinnegan. Hashirama had never personally seen a Rinnegan before, but he knew how it looked like. When he was alive, Senju clan still had scrolls from the time of the Sage of the Six Paths, and in one of the scrolls was a drawing of the Rinnegan. The first Hokage never knew how someone could achieve that kind of power but didn't care to know that power like that could destroy the world or save it. While Hagoromo couldn't help but see both Asura and Indra in Naruto, his eyes just like Indra, but kinder and softer and with Ashura's face and attitude. Kurama smirked seeing Naruto standing up to the damn Uchiha, especially his Rinnegan showing the Uchiha that he had achieved something that Madara could never succeed in his life. Well done, Naruto. Naruto suddenly felt a massive pressure on his head, feeling like his head would split open, his Rinnegan slowly disappeared, and his eyes turned back to blue. Naruto felt himself falling on the floor, but he didn't want to fail. Clenching his teeth and gathering every bit of power he had left, he moved his right leg forward before he could collapse, still standing. Naruto stood up again, breathing heavily but still there, sweat rolling down his face. Hagoromo and Hashirama smiled at him while the strange moody guy was giving him a nod of acknowledgement. A smile slowly spread on his face, and Hagoromo decided to continue with what he wanted to do. None of them had that much time left until they returned back. Clearing his throat, the sage glanced at them. Understanding what he wanted, both Hashirama and Madara took a step forward. Naruto, is good to meet you. In case you don't know who I am, my name is Hashirama Senju, the first Hokage of the Hidden Leaf Village. Hashirama introduced himself, smiling at the little kid. Naruto smiled back and turned to look at the other one, who looked hesitant for a second before sighing in annoyance. My name is Uchiha Madara, the rival of Hashirama and the greatest Uchiha of all time. Madara introduced himself with a slightly colder tone than Hashirama. Naruto just looked at both of them in silence before deciding to ask a question that had been bugging his head since he saw them. Not that I don't like your company, but why are you here, and how are you even here? Naruto asked, looking at them before turning to look at Hagoromo, who stood silent. They're here to tell you the story of their time, Hagoromo explained, and Hashirama sat in a cross position. Now, this will take a while, so hear me carefully, Hashirama stated, knowing that due to his explanation, what the child would do when he grows up depended on it. He wanted Naruto not to be another Madara or even worse. After listening to his story for a few hours, Naruto stood silent. No one said anything, even Madara raised an eyebrow at the kid for not talking. After a few minutes of silence, you were able to stop the war by uniting the clans with Madara and creating a village that everyone could call home. Naruto started smiling. Still, he wondered why they didn't try to untie all the other villages. If a single person ruled the 5 villages, united, there would be no wars. At least that's what Naruto thought. Hashirama nodded his head while Madara kept quiet. Why did you not try to unite the other villages as well? Naruto asked, looking at the first Hokage. At this question, Hashirama lowered his head slightly, almost in shame, while Madara snorted. I did try, but the other villages didn't want any alliance with us, he replied, with a sad smile. The first Hokage didn't want to admit that the Kages had refused any peace treatment. He had captured and given each village a biju or 2 in hopes for peace. But all that stopped nothing as a result of their arrogance and greed. The second and third wars followed the first ninja war. It was never stopping. Madara wanted to say that he had suggested just forcing them into submission. He and Hashirama were more than enough to deal with anyone foolish enough to oppose them. While Naruto thought that if they had done that back then, if they had united all 5 big villages, he would still have his parents with him. And maybe none of the great shinobi wars would have happened. Naruto thought but decided to keep quiet at his thoughts for now. Turning to look at Hagoromo, you said you knew about my father, who's he? He asked. Very well. The blonde felt a chill on his body when he heard him. For a long time, he had wanted to know who his parents were. Of course, Naruto always had his doubts about the identity of his father being the 4th Hokage since he looked very similar to him. Blue eyes and spiky blonde hair just like Naruto, but that raised the question of why he was left living in a small apartment. Deciding to listen to Hagoromo, the blonde turned his attention to the older man. Your father is Minato Namikaze Uchiha, and Kushina Uzumaki Senju, Hagoromo said. Naruto's eyes widened, he flinched slightly, and silence took over the room. He heard him, but Naruto still felt like he didn't listen to him. My father is the 4th. Kushina. Who is she? Naruto felt his breath stuck on his throat, and his first thought was how his mother looked like. Why did his father seal Kurama inside him? Naruto liked Kurama, but everyone hated him because of it. He didn't have a family. Naruto felt his eyes suddenly burning, and his vision was fuzzy. Am I crying? He now knew the truth, and his parents would never hug him, they would never tell him tales at night, they would never kiss his cheek. They would never scold him. They would never celebrate his birthday. They would never be happy and proud of him. Naruto fell on his knees sobbing, his hands on the floor. Hashirama rushed at Naruto, but Hagoromo raised his hand before he could reach him. Naruto felt more tears burning his cheeks, his eyes crying and not stopping, his eyes turned red and puffy. Shaking his head, why was life so unfair? He suddenly felt a hand on his shoulder, and he didn't bother to look at whoever was near him. He didn't care, and he wanted to be alone. Leave me alone, and I want to stay alone. Dot, 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 dot. I'm really sorry, Naru-kun. I'm sorry for not being able to be with you. Naruto heard those words. He still kept his head down. He must have imagined that tone. He had never listened to that kind of tone before, full of love, and the tone was so kind, the kindest he had ever heard before. Slowly looking up, he saw blonde hair and a face looking at him. He had kneeled in front of Naruto and was looking at his blue eyes with his own. Naruto looked at the man but couldn't believe his own eyes, and he felt his heart beating on his chest, more tears on his face. He threw his hands around his neck. Was he really there? "2-chan," Naruto screamed, hugging him, but he pulled his head away and looked at him again, making sure that he was actually there with him and wasn't a dream. "Yes, Naruto is me," his father said, and they both hugged again. Naruto hugged him tightly, afraid that he would disappear and leave him alone. "I missed you," Naruto said, crying. Minato felt his heart hurting from his words, and he didn't need to ask to know that his life wasn't a happy one. Her words suddenly returned back to his head. "You know how Jinchurikis are treated." Minato, of course, knew that, but he had hoped that someone would take care of his son, hoping that Leaf Village was different from the others. They owned him that much. He and Kushina lost their lives for the village. They owned to him. They all owned to Kushina. They owned to them to treat Naruto as he deserved, to have a loving family. Pulling away, he stared. He could see Kushina in him. His face was just like hers. His nose, his smile, and especially his jawline. "Naruto, you live with someone, right?" Minato asked, dreading the answer. Hashirama and Madara were interested as well. They both knew it mattered a lot how a child was raised, which would indicate how he will be when they are fully grown. Especially Hashirama, who dreaded that Naruto might decide to become an enemy of the village. "No, no one is with me. The Hokage visits me once a month to give me money, but that's all," he stated with a slightly colder tone, and Minato felt like he was directing the blame to him, not that he could blame him. "What about Jiraiya-sen's?" Minato asked, almost pleading, hoping that at least his sensei was looking after Naruto. But the young blonde just gave him a confused look, not knowing who this Jiraiya was, and in the end, he just shook his head, confirming what they already knew. Minato felt his heart drop. He felt like going there and just screaming at everyone. How dare Sarutobi leave his child alone? "Minato, your friend Shukaku tried to adopt Naruto, but the old Hokage refused anyone to adopt Naruto," Kurama suddenly said. "Why?" Hashirama asked. Minato was in shock to ask himself but was listening to the answer. He said, "Him being raised by a clan would create unbalance, and I don't need to tell you why the civil families refused to raise him," Kurama explained, much to the shock of Minato and the confusion of both Madara and Hashirama. "What do you mean? Naruto being a Jinchuriki is a SS secret of a village, no one should know about it, and that knowledge is punished by death if you spread it," Hashirama stated. He had created that rule when Mito-chan had become the Jinchuriki. But looking at Naruto now, he knew that everyone in the village knew about his status as a Jinchuriki, which was beyond risky. It was simply a miracle that no enemy shinobi had killed or kidnapped Naruto. Yet. Madara shook his head in disappointment. He knew peace made people weak and stupid, but this was beyond ridiculous. Minato bit his lower lip and, trying to calm down, what they had done, they have spit in his grave. He became a cage to protect the village, and they rewarded him by simply treating his son like garbage. "Naruto, as much as I hate to say it, we don't have long," Hagoromo suddenly spoke. Naruto turned his attention to him, still standing close to his father. Hagoromo turned to Minato. "Can you please show us your little secret, Minato Uchiha?" Hagoromo stated, earning a surprised look from Minato, Hashirama and Madara. Minato glanced at his son before his eyes changed to Mangekyo Sharingan. His Mangekyo looked like a whirlpool, and in the center was a black hole with 3 tomo in the middle. No one looked surprised by it except Madara, who narrowed his eyes and took a step closer. "Who were your parents?" Madara asked with a cold tone that Hashirama knew very well. "My father was Idari Uchiha, my mother wasn't an Uchiha," and she told me that he died of illness before I was born, Minato answered. Madara studied the face of this fourth Hokage and couldn't help but notice a slight similarity between him and. He shook his head and decided to ignore it for now. But his gut feeling didn't go away. Naruto, you are the reincarnation of both of my sons. Just by looking at you now, I know you will be powerful, but I want to ask what it is that you want to do, Hagoromo asked, wanting to know what Naruto had decided to do with the power he had. Naruto understood why Hagoromo had told him the story about his mother. Looking straight at Hagoromo, his eyes turned a fully matured Sharingan. Hashirama looked impressed with him unlocking his Sharingan at such a young age. In some ways, Naruto reminded him of Madara. This world has suffered for a long time, but when Hashirama and Madara-sama united the clans of the Land of Fire, they stopped the wars between clans. I will unite the 5 great villages. Only together we can create peace, Naruto stated. Hagoromo smiled at him, and so did Minato, who patted his back, while Hashirama thought if such a thing was even possible in the long run, while Madara thought that might work, but a lot of blood will be spilt. Suddenly all 4 of them started shining and slowly disappearing. 2-chan. Naruto screamed in panic and went to hug his father. Hugging back, Minato looked at his eyes, crying. Naruto, I want you to remember that whenever happens. Your mother and I will always love you. No matter what you do, I will love you always, he said, looking directly at his eyes before disappearing. Hashirama gave him a reassuring smile. Madara kept quiet with his eyes at Minato. At the same time, Hagoromo hoped that what Naruto learned today would make him make the right decision in the future. Disappearing, soon they were gone, and the only thing left was Naruto standing alone again. Naruto fell silent when they disappeared, and he was alone again. Naruto? Kurama asked, concerned for him. Naruto kept quiet, and his mind had enough, everything blackened, and Naruto welcomed the darkness like an old friend. His only thought was, why there's so much pain?